This is what such a plankton graveyard looks like today. Mountains of black rock.
Well, here at Kimmeridge Bay in Dorset, we have the so-called Kimmeridge clay. And this is a black shale mudstone. So this is made up of the remains of plankton and clay, all these fine particles that have fallen through the water column and accumulated on the sea floor. If you look at these sediments in detail, you often find they're finely laminated. So there have been no animals churning them up, mixing them. The layers are just as they were when they were deposited during the late Jurassic.
These fine black shales have made southern England's Jurassic coast famous for the exquisite preservation of large animal fossils. But most people don't realise the shale extends deep under the country to the north and underpins the UK's bottom line as well.
Here at Kimmeridge, it's not mature, it's not been buried deeply enough to generate oil, but this, if you like, does the business in the North Sea. So this is very, very important for the whole economic well-being of the British Isles.
If you harboured any doubts that oil really does come from rock, you could always try this quick test. This is a bit of immature oil source rock, the Kimmeridge clay, and this is a small flame. Put the two together, and in a few moments, the rock starts to splutter and burn. It's not a raging inferno, but that smell from the blue smoke is unmistakable. It's astonishing to think that what's burning here is fossilised Jurassic sunlight. But as a lump of rock, it's not much use for filling up your petrol tank. To drive out the oil, it needs to be cooked slowly in the moderate oven of the Earth's oil kitchen. And to enter the kitchen, the rock needs to be buried deep underground.
When it gets to a certain depth of burial, some thousands of feet below the surface, it's physically cooked by the pressures and the temperatures you get there, and the organic carbon cracks and goes from this original material to light sweet crude, as oil people tend to call it.
The temperature is critical. Bury the shale too far down and it is overcooked into natural gas. Too shallow, and you end up with a half-baked greasy oil shale. Deep below Saudi Arabia, the conditions were just right, like a hot pot of tea for millions of years. Light, sweet crude containing our carbon atom began to flow like warm honey from the buried source rock. Of course, the Earth did not stay still while all this happened. The continents continued to break up and move. Mountain ranges rose and fell. Seas evaporated and returned. The face of the Earth changed completely. Around 15 million years ago, the Tethys Ocean finally closed up as Arabia collided ever so gently with Eurasia. The Tethys did not disappear entirely. Much of it simply folded and crumpled. Here in the magnificent desolation of Oman's Al-Hajar Mountains, the evidence of collision remains stark and dramatic. Welcome to the bottom of the ancient Tethys Ocean today. Baking hot, bone dry. Here in the Arabian Peninsula, there are kilometres and kilometres of these ancient marine sediments laid down right through the age of the dinosaurs. But there are a few places where you can walk on its surface. Here in the Hajar Mountains and in the Tuwaiq Mountains in Saudi Arabia. Pretty much everywhere else, it's buried deep beneath the desert sands. Three times during the reign of the dinosaurs, once in the Jurassic and twice later in the Cretaceous, thick black shales were laid down in the Middle East. So much that 2/3 of the world's oil comes from organic sediments buried here alone.
In Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and the 5 main Middle Eastern states, there were really singular conditions. You had a number of things that absolutely are required for giant oil fields. Really rich source rocks from which the carbon can be cooked at the right temperatures and pressures underground. Really excellent reservoir rocks where the oil can migrate through the microscopic pores and be trapped in these reservoirs. Really good so-called cap rocks. These are the impervious rocks over the reservoir rock that actually locks the oil in place.
Did you see the white color here?
Yes.
And finally, really gentle structures, folded structures, anticlines, geologists call them, in which the oil could sit. Most people don't realize this. They think you can find oil anywhere. The vast majority of the planet is actually devoid of oil because these special conditions are not met.
Against these odds, the crude containing our carbon atom seeped ever upwards. It oozed slowly through the most porous and permeable rocks available, like ink in blotting paper. Eventually it could go no further and trickled into the limestone pore spaces of the largest oil reservoir on Earth. And there it stayed, trapped until humans came along. The sludgy remains of tiny, brainless plants waiting to hold dramatic sway on the future of the most intelligent life form the planet has ever seen.
I love oil. I think it's one of the most important elements, materials in modern society and civilization.
95% of the goods in shops are there in some degree because of oil or contain oil or are derived from oil.
When do we first start running out of oil? Well, in fact, we started when we produced the first gallon.
If you try to imagine living without cars or airplanes or air conditioning or any kind of product made from oil, you just can't possibly conceive of it.
We've allowed ourselves to become completely addicted to this stuff. I mean, it underpins virtually everything in society.
We're using it up in, the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, we've used up nearly half of, that's incredible to me, how fast we've done it and how long it took to make this stuff.
No one knows for sure when humans first encountered oil, though it was certainly at least 3,000 years ago, and probably here in the lands of the ancient Persian Empire, where the chemical remains of fossilized sunlight still wind their way to the surface. Of course, it's not only oil that can escape from the ground. This is Jan Adar, or Burning Mountain in Azerbaijan, and the natural methane seeping from the earth here caught fire over 50 years ago, and it's been burning ever since.